where exactly do you see the Indian political system or the state applying it in certain areas, and where they are failing, and what they need to do in order to go on the path that Arthashastra's economic policies say?
Yeah, that's I think an important question, right? I think the aim of such an exercise is to sort of have a constructive approach to things. Like, how do you sort of learn from these lessons, whatever that we feel is applicable, and how do you sort of enable better policy execution? I think that is the fundamental sort of uh, uh, premise which one needs to look at. So, in that sense, I think what because the fact that our systems are so different to those times, right? It's very difficult to systemically completely change things, right? It's not practical. But there are definitely, ways in which you can sort of, this is what I refer in the book as called dharmic nudges, which sort of facilitate greater execution of policy, right? To put it in very simplistic sort of terminology, let's take the idea of gas cylinders, right? Ujjwala, right? I think there was an effort done by the prime minister uh, 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 to urge people who had these cylinders to give it for others, because if they had too many of them, the poor required it in terms of sort of sacrificing it for others, which was a very popular response. People reacted to it. But if you really think about it, what is this policy action? This policy action is basically triggering a sort of dharmic instinct in yourself to look at the bigger picture of things, which is helping others and ensuring that, even though you're giving away something that you already have for the benefit of the others, right? So if this sort of iteration can be done at a much bigger scale, say Swachh Bharat, for another example, it leads to your sort of cleanliness part of definition of dharma, which is, saucham, and how, the importance of cleanliness and your societal responsibility, where you're thinking that keeping your house clean is important, keeping your society clean is important. And when you trigger that sort of instinct, then people, in a very structured and calibrated manner, then your outcomes of a clean society becomes far more higher. So this is far more effective. I mean, while rules and regulations are important to sort of get people, uh, 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 get people to do these things, but there's always that 10-15% sort of doesn't, or 15-20% doesn't follow these things for a variety of reasons. But if it is through a sort of a nudging approach like this, which can sort of trigger a dharmic instinct, then I think the efficiency of current policy formulation is far higher, because you are going into a societal construct and getting into their sort of dharmic consciousness. I think in that sense, these sort of ideas can be used on a case-to-case basis on particular projects or particular policies where efficiencies are lower and people's sort of response levels aren't higher. So in that sense, it can be a very good sort of add-on to our current system rather than a sort of a wholesale change. And then the entire idea of data. I mean, I've often argued that we have a lot of sustainability indexes, sustainable goals, sustainable indices. You could always have a sort of a dharmic coefficient or index, which sort of gives you an idea of which can be formulated and it gives you a sort of a quantifiable metric, which can also enable better policy execution. So I think this sort of an approach would be far more constructive than a wholesale approach in today's context. Of course, there are some issues where this is required even more. I mean, if you take the idea of climate change again, right? climate change primarily is sort of a behavioral issue. No matter what legislation or taxes that you impose on me or you, unless we as individuals have a clear sort of um, uh, uh, um, agenda or clear thinking to protect both ourselves and the environment, we wouldn't be making those actions. So on particular issues, I think there's a lot of relevance, which we can use it as an add-on. Besides civilizational awareness, which I think is a very good thing, gains a lot of confidence that some of these civilizations which dominated uh, the large sections of the subcontinent had such ideas. I think in today's times, these nudges could be a good way of making policy more effective.